Welcome to the Jali Podcast. I'm your host, Melyssa Barrett. This podcast is for those who are interested in the conversation around equity, diversity, and inclusion. Each week, I'll be interviewing a guest who has something special to share or is actively part of building solutions in the space. Let's get started. Welcome to the Jali Podcast. I'm your host, Melyssa Barrett. Jali is a West African word for storyteller, and that's exactly what this podcast is about. We sit down with guests who are actively building solutions, bridging differences, and expanding the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Rooted in the principles of Kwanzaa and the rich tradition of African and African American history and culture, because here's what I believe. Perspective matters. And one of the best ways to gain perspective is simply to talk to people. You would be surprised what a 5-minute conversation can reveal about how someone thinks, what they value, and who they truly are. That's why I always want to know, not just what people stand for, but how they became the person standing before you today. That goes double when it comes to the people running for office. Our community deserves to be informed. We deserve to ask the hard questions, hear real answers, and make our voices count at the ballot box with full knowledge of who we're voting for and who we're not. Today's episode is a first for the Jali Podcast. For the very first time, I'm sitting down with a gubernatorial candidate. And not just any candidate. This is someone I've had the privilege of knowing and working alongside right here in Tracy, California. We have served together in the nonprofit space, and she has been a steadfast supporter of our Kwanzaa celebration for many, many years. So this conversation carries a special meaning for me personally. She's the former mayor of the city of Tracy, the first African American and first female ever elected to that office. She's a pastor, grandmother, mentor, and the author of Unapologetic Leadership, Unleashing Your Inner Warrior. And today she's running for governor of the state of California as an independent candidate because she believes California needs leaders who bring people together, not divide them further apart. This is not an endorsement. This is a conversation. And I encourage every one of you listening, regardless of your party, your politics, or your zip code, to do your research, ask your questions, and show up informed. Today, you get to hear more from Dr. Nancy D. Young. Let's get into it. So I'm excited because honestly, I'm not sure I ever imagined I would have a gubernatorial candidate on the Jali Podcast to talk about, your candidacy and your perspective. So it's truly an honor for me just to have this conversation. So I'm excited, and I hope everyone else will be as excited as I am to hear from Dr. Nancy Young, former mayor of the city of Tracy. You have so many different accolades. You're the first African American, first female mayor of Tracy, California. You've written a book called Unapologetic Leadership, Unleashing Your Inner Warrior. So I definitely want to talk a little bit about that and just kind of ask you about yourself. So I'm really just grateful to have you join me for this conversation. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. We're getting close to the end of this campaign season for 10 days away from the primaries. Nerve-wracking.
Let's just start there in terms of, before titles, campaigns, and politics, who is Nancy Young at her core?
At my core, there's been so many different ways to phrase, who I am. I wear so many different hats. I mean, if we're going to go back to birth from the beginning, because literally I drove to the house that I lived in at birth I had not been back to that house in 50 something years since we moved from there, near Inglewood in Leimert Park, of California. And I went there and I knocked on the door and I met the gentleman who lived there. We kind of talked about my history of living there and his history of being there and who he's related to and all that kind of stuff now, big time in world news. But for me, growing up in Southern California, I am a product of California, Southern and Northern California. Of course, I moved to Northern California almost 40 years ago when I attended UC Berkeley. So moving from Los Angeles area, Compton to be specific, where I grew up until I was 13, and then ended up moving to San Fernando Valley after they started doing drive-bys on my streets. Moving to San Fernando, graduating in San Fernando Tiger, then going on to UC Berkeley. Having grown up in such a turbulent community, I really learned how to talk to people. I learned how to look people in the eye and be like, hey, how you doing? So yeah, so you be respectful. And many times when you give respect, you do get that respect back. And so having to, live under certain guidelines. I lived in a Crip neighborhood. I didn't have option to wear red. My brother didn't have an option to ride a red bike. His bike had to be blue. They didn't have all these different diverse colors nowadays like they do. And so, now being in a culture of even red and blues when it comes to Dem or Republican, I've chosen purple because it's a blend. It's a blend of both. And so I've just always been that independent person supporting people at all levels. But going back to me, growing up in Southern, going to Northern California, after graduated Berkeley, I got married and raised my family in Northern California. And that's where I decided to, plant my roots and live my life in Northern California. And so overall, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother. I love being a grandma. I love being an aunt, a friend, a pastor, and a mentor. So mentorship is really just a base of who I am. And so after having been elected to the Tracy City Council, serving 12 years, which is the maximum I can serve, being the first elected female and Black mayor, just thrilled to be able to make headways and strides through things that only power and position can actually get to make some things happen. Unfortunately, sometimes our voices doesn't seem to matter, which everybody's voices do. All of us are part of the solution. So we, at least, even if we just bring the problems and the challenges to the forefront to make sure that they're heard and that somebody's listening to do something with. And I'm grateful for the authority that I've had in the past to be able to make things happen, to be able to bring to Tracy a 300 plus million measure that's building amenities and things that we need in our community, to be able to bring a leadership wall here, to be able to start having paid internships here for our youth, just doing a lot of things. I'm grateful to be able to highlight the great things that others are doing in the community too. It's not just about me, but when you have the power to highlight, lift somebody else up, we should be doing that. And so post being mayor and my season of mentorship, even more so in building up other leaders, I decided I'm just going to be the coach. I'm going to help push people on. And as we talk about in the Unapologetic Leadership, Unleashing Your Inner Warrior, and then God woke me up at the beginning of March. It's been only a couple of months. It seems like forever now, almost 3 months. And he pushed me out off the sideline, said, okay, right now I need you to pause being a coach and I need you to get in the game. I need you to get in the game because there's such polarization that's going on around our country and around our community and our state. And so I just decided to get into this particular battle because there's a need right now. And so I'm just been that overall advocate wherever it's needed to show up and to step up where I'm needed. Where there's other places that I see people are doing great jobs, I just cheer them on all that I can. I don't need to do everything that other people do. I'm just trying to fill in where there's areas that has a lack. So that's Nancy overall.
That's awesome. So, I mean, like when you were growing up, did you envision yourself in politics, or was this something that came later, or how did this all come about?
Now I've seen myself in different ways. When I was probably, should go all the way back to second grade, I was a safety monitor. By the time I was 9, I was the first police officer in the church. I was an usher. I was like, I like being able to have, some aspect of inclusion and being a part of things. I was on the part of the choir. I directed the choir when I was 11 years old. I taught Sunday school. I just liked always being a part of whatever. I just never liked to just sit on the sidelines and not do anything or just watch others. And so when I was in junior high school, I did get more into leadership. within the school. I was limited in Compton. It was really a caste system, and the high yellow girls decided that I was not worthy of it because my sister was dating a guy out of her class. So when I moved to San Fernando, I met a friend there, and she invited me to a noontime, a lunchtime council meeting. And so I went to that, and different ones were asking questions, and I had a lot of ideas. I raised my hand, and the interesting thing is that they actually cared about what I said. I'm like, really? My voice matters? And so all of a sudden, that's why I started saying, your voice does matter. And so that's how I really got involved. I was in the 8th grade. And then by the time I got to the 10th grade, I had an advisor of government come and ask for me in my yearbook class and asked me to run for student body president. And I was like, oh no, I'm too young for that. Like, I'm a 10th grader. Aren't you supposed to be a junior? He's like, no, you're not. You're not too young. And it was a white gentleman, but he saw something in me that other teachers saw in me that I didn't even see in myself. And so he pushed me from being the secretary of our 10th grade class to running for student body president. I wasn't really quite ready to take that leap. So I ran for student body vice president, and surprisingly, I won. And I say surprisingly because it seems like everybody was running for that one office. It was very little competition in the other offices, but that one office had a lot. But I didn't have anything to lose because I was just doing it because he thought that I could. And so I did. And that day of elections, I was off-site at a meeting. I forgot to vote for myself. I didn't get to vote for myself. I got home, asked my sister. She said, oh, was that today? I forgot. Oh, so she forgot to vote for me. Then I called my girlfriend who got me into going into these things, Carolyn, and she was like, oh, I forgot to vote myself. I'm like, the 3 votes. 3. I don't even know if I was going to get 3 at least. None of us voted for me.
Wow.
And I still won. I still won. And so the next year, when I was going into my senior year, I actually ran for president unopposed. I mean, there were some girls that threatened to run against me. They came and talked to me. And so I just suggested to them if they wanted to be in office the next year, I suggest they run for something else like a student, like a senior class. And they did. They won their roles and I won mine. And so we moved on. And so I wanted to be at that point, my advisor was like, Nancy, you can do anything. You'd be the president of the United States. And I was like, okay, I think I will. And so when I left for college, he was like, now remember, you have to be 25 to be able to run for like Congress or anything like that. So you just get on somebody's team for 7 years. I'm like, 7 years, maybe 2 or 3. 7 is doing a bit much. So when I got to college, I went to the Black Student Union because I was president of my local one. So I was like, I'll just get involved, at this level. I'm not going to try to do anything on a political front for 7 years. And so I thought about it when I was 25. When I was 25, I was pregnant with my second son. I was halfway through my master's program. And we started a ministry the month after I turned 26. And so that was over 30 years ago. And I said, you know what? I don't have time for no politics. I'm just going to deal with ministry. And I worked in my community. I did mentorships, and so I kept myself busy until I moved here to Tracy. And so I was like 37 or something like that, 38. And then I ran into my advisor from high school. I said, okay, at this age, at this point, what should I do? Where do I jump in the game? He said, well, I would just advise you to go to your local city council meeting, see what's going on in your community and see where you can go from there. And then that's how I ended up getting involved in local politics. And so from there, I thought if I ever made mayor, I mean, my mentor who I met in Tracy, Evelyn Tolbert, she was like, local is where it's at because you make all the big decisions and you really get to see your work manifest here. So once I had already reached mayor, I was good. I was good with that. And I said, I think I'll just stay here and just build up other leaders. But God had more in store for me. I had thought about governor briefly, but, I just kind of put that in my back pocket because I thought Kamala was going to do it. But she chose not to. So
Yeah.
here I am.
Wow. That's amazing. That's an interesting story because, and by the way, shout out to Evelyn Tolbert because she is just a phenomenal woman. And so I'm so glad to have known her. And I know she has mentored many through the political process. And so just appreciating her. It's such an interesting story that you just, kind of talk through. And, to have you become mayor, be the first female, the first African-American. I mean, what was that like for you personally in terms of, achieving those? Because my guess is you hadn't necessarily anticipated that you would just walk in and be the first female and the first African-American.
No, I had not seen that. And I didn't know that would even be the first opportunity when I started going to council meetings. Of course, when I first came into the meeting back in 2008, Evelyn Tolbert was on the council, older Black lady, the very first African-American on the council. So I'm literally the second since 1868, since the city began. But anyways, I digress. And there was another lady on the council, Tucker, a Caucasian lady. And then there were 3 white male. And so 2 years later, when I became, 4 years later, when I became council member, there was 5 white men there. So I knew I was going to be the only female going into the council for a couple of years. And it was all white males. So, I mean, I felt like, I don't know if you ever heard me say, I felt like Gladys Knight in the Pips every time that I went out with them. And I made sure I had on a dress. I was elegant. I was like a woman every time I go out. And so for me, it wasn't until I started doing the research to find out there had not been an elected female to mayor. And Evelyn Tolbert was the only one before me. And I knew she had not become mayor. So then I found out that I would be the first. Now, when I left Compton, you have to understand, growing up in Compton, it was 99% Black, all shades of Black, high yellow to dark lick Black.
Yeah.
And so, just different type of culture. And then when I moved to San Fernando, it was a shock for me because it was like watching TV. You see a couple of Black kids on a bus, and we used to always think those were like little stuck-up kids. So when I went to my 9th grade class trip to Magic Mountain, and I know I was getting off that bus, and it was only about 3 of us on that bus, I was like, oh no, all these little Black kids at these other schools are going to think I'm snooty and I'm snobby, but I'm not. How do I show them down? But that's not really how my personality is. Anyways, but I know I'm not this valley girl that I moved to. So when I got to San Fernando and I went in my classes, a number of the classes, more than half of them, I was the only Black person in my class. So I first had that shock and that awakening there. And then over the years, I worked with JP Morgan for 10 years. It was a tech company out of Pleasanton. I was the only Black person in that office for about 8 of those 10 years. And so when I worked for Lamb Research, it took forever for another Black person to be in my department. So I've been in so many places that I felt like I was like the token person. And you understand, when I graduated from UC Berkeley, it was only 3% of all of us that graduated from UC Berkeley the year that I graduated. So I got used to being not the only one around, but really trying to look for others I can help build up and encourage so that I'm not the only one. Some people are happy to be the only one. I'm not that one. I think that we're there for a purpose and to help bring others alongside us so that there could be more of us to bring more cultural influence and more ideas, because there's a lot of brilliant people that are of color, brilliant, absolutely, that are just underrated or underutilized and unseen. And so going into that position was new, but it was a challenge that I was willing to take because I know the ceilings have got to be broken for us to start to get through. We can't just keep hitting our head up against the wall and not make any impact. So I was happy to be able to do that because I know that God's going to be with me and he's going to help me through every step of the way to give me wisdom. When I was in a situation that there were swastikas put in my yard, I did ask why I wasn't in a burning cross because I'm like, did they get me mixed up? Because I'm Black. And so, but then when we had the dead rabbits put there the next week, going through these things. And I remember I called my mentor and I said, did any of this happen to you? She said, no, absolutely not. And so I'm like, wow, so I'm the first one. So all eyes on me. How I'm going to handle this? And so, I mean, I really feel like, when you're out there, it makes a difference. I mean, I want to make sure that I am representing. I'm representing not only our Black people. And I feel like, some pressures are on my shoulders, but I feel like I'm representing women too. And I got to show up and I have to, be a good representation of that. Today, I heard one thing that I think I'll always have in my mind now. I was at a church service in between my meetings this morning, and the pastor was praying over another lady across the church. And she said, do not let your mouth mess up your voice. And so I was like, I got to write that one down because I'm going to use that for my leadership. Because people, they can say stuff and it just messes up their testimony. It messes up their message. And so for me, it's a weight of making sure that, that I'm living above board. I'm living always integrity-wise, because I know God is looking at me first of all. And he's the only one who got a heaven or hell to put me in. And so I need to make sure that I'm serving him and that I am a good representation.
I mean, it's so interesting to me because the mayor role is such a significant role in the city. And now you're kind of moving into a much larger role when it comes to the state. When you were serving as mayor, what did that position teach you about people that most Californians maybe don't realize?
I know I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. He was like, "What are one of the things that really surprised you being in the audience and going behind the dais?" Some people are just reckless and raggedy with the words that they say and with authority. They don't even have to know you. Some of the meanest people have come into the council chambers and they didn't know me at all. But they're so mad and they just hate me. And I'm like, really? You don't even know me. So that just like, it makes me, it tickles me. It's like, really? Okay. Now, if I really did something to you, that's a different story, but you don't even know me. So, just going into that role is such a great responsibility being there. But at the same time, just becoming a council member, first of all, was going from like being an auntie. Like I was a great aunt. I am a great aunt. And, but to being a mom and then even to being, a mother of children where you're trying to really coordinate. But it's a lot of responsibility for these little people that, you're responsible for as they get older. And I'm grateful that I'm like in a more of a mentorship relationship with my kids now that they're all super grown. And so, but to have that respect for them to come back to me to ask me my opinion on things or to talk with me through things or for me to pray with them through things, that means a lot to me because they can see how important they are to me as well as others. I start with charity at home for real. I make sure that I'm pouring into my children as I'm pouring into others as well. So being in that position, it was a lot of great responsibility. But just, I think even just learning more about what my role entailed and what authorities and powers that I had. I tell you something may seem super simple, but when I found out I had the authority to give a key to a city away, I'm like, let me see who's done some stuff here. Who can I bless? I was looking at the picture of the 30 women that I highlighted. I saw you were in my group of women that I did. And that was so much fun for me just to be able to think, oh my goodness, I know it's more than 30 women. I could easily do 100, who I could highlight because there are so many times that people do such great work and they're not highlighted. And so if I have the opportunity to open doors for people, then I do that. I've written so many letters of recommendation, not only for kids that were going to college and adults going into doctorate programs, but adults going into supervisor roles and going into superintendent roles and going to CEO roles. It's been great fun for me to do this because for me, I've always had way more time than treasure. And so what I can do with my time and what I can do with authority, I'm happy to do it in abundance. And just being able to be in a position to show mercy. There's been time we've been in judicial roles, quasi-judicial roles, to be able to make good choices, to ask good questions. Because some people don't ask the right questions. They don't know, but some things just come from keep living. Like my pastor used to tell me when I was a little girl, keep living. Yeah. And so, this experience and to have that concern for people, I think that it's really from a servant's heart that I've learned as a leader, as mayor, as a council member, to be able to care about others and how can I really help you. And so that's what I've learned the most.
And that's so important nowadays because when we think about artificial intelligence, I think we don't realize how significant that human element will become even more so. Because nowadays you don't know what's real or fake sometimes.
So no, it's crazy for AI. Just a quick moment. I was in Los Angeles a couple of days ago, and I went to support a lady, your girl Peaches. I met her at an award event to honor Charles Burnett for his work that he's done over decades. And so she told me, that's not her day job, but that's her nighttime kind of thing, and to be a comedian. And I asked her when she was performing. She said she was performing, this past week, but this was a month ago when I met her. And so she was going to be at Flappers. I had never gone to Flappers. So I said, well, I'm going to come down and I'm going to see you. So I got a ticket and my son and we went to go watch her performance the other day. And while we were waiting for everything to start, because we got there early, I was talking to another lady I met. She's from London and she's African, but she's lived in London. So she has a really strong British accent. And so we're talking and she's in the acting world as well. But she was saying one of her girlfriends just got a job to film this movie. And all they needed her for was 2 days. They shot her likeness, her voice, and just the things, just for 2 days. And then they made the whole rest of the movie with that from AI.
Oh, wow.
And so it was disturbing for her because she couldn't use her craft for everything. And she only got paid for 2 days instead of the weeks that they would have paid her for being on set. And I'm like, so they're doing AI movies? I am so disturbed.
And using her likeness, which is, it's like, okay, that's a whole nother story. But
That's a whole nother thing. It's like, I would have said that. I would have looked like that. I would have sounded like that. How do you get supporting actress? How do you get starring, actress when it's not really you doing all those emotions and things? Anyways, AI, it's interesting. It's helpful in a lot of different ways, but we do definitely need the human element.
yeah. Well, like I said, that's a whole nother podcast. So now, in speaking of which, I mean, you talked about service and all of those things. And I know when you wrote your book, Unapologetic Leadership, Unleashing Your Inner Warrior, you tackle things like, overcoming self-doubt and, kind of owning your platform, kind of, being a warrior, really, just becoming that and kind of navigating, a lot of the pressure. What are are there some specific lessons that you want listeners to take away from the book?
So now I've done a few workshops, and I started out with teens, which is interesting. One of my friends asked me to do that because I'm like, I'm not going to do teens right now. I'm going to do adults already, help others go to other levels. But they've been challenging. These young people are like really brilliant.
Yeah.
And so, but as far as even owning your own platform, I would say like even now myself, because the different ones, I met with a group of college students the other day. And, they were just talking about being nervous and stepping out and the first time getting into leadership roles or even thinking about running for an office. And I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter how old you are. It's nerve wracking when you step out. I've said so many times now that I'm running for governor, but so many times mayor kept coming out because I ran for mayor. That was my more recent. And so, and even just, when I pulled up to Sacramento to turn in my initial paperwork, to declare that I was going to run. As I sat in the car by myself, with just me and God, I'm talking to God and I'm praying. And I'm like, Lord, are we really doing this? We doing this? Okay. All right, let's go. And so I got out the car and I sang Walk With Me, Lord, all the way till I got inside the building into the elevator. I'm just singing and I'm humming it because I'm like, Lord, you got to go with me because it's scary. Everything is scary, every step. But I'm like, but you know what? When I ran for council, it was scary. I had never done that before. When I ran for mayor, I had never done that before. And so I know that owning your own platform, whatever God's given you to do, it takes courage. And that's one of the things when I first signed up, I said, okay, my new word besides unapologetic is audacity. So people are like, you have the audacity to run? I sure do. I had the audacity to run for governor.
Yeah.
I got an audacity to be a leader. One of my friends said, are you going to be a lifelong politician? He didn't know that was offensive to me. No, I'm not going to be a lifelong politician. I'm a lifelong leader. I am here to lead, and I'm here to lead other leaders because no one person can do it all by themselves. I'm here to inspire others to greatness. That's what I want to do. So as far as the unapologetic leadership, I want people to be inspired to be able to lead on purpose, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary, because great leadership is not because everything's easy around you. It takes work, and you're going to have courage. Courage is in the midst of fear. Courage is in the midst of chaos and stuff going on around. The Lord had to remind me just 2 days ago when I was trying to find an outfit to wear that I will be with you. All I need you to do is to have the courage to go forward, and I'll be right there with you. So that to remind myself, and I have to remind others that things are going to happen. And like whenever I have, talks and things to do, my stomach get all nervous and everything. I'm like, I can't eat, and we'll eat afterwards. I can't do it. But it's just that always. And so I remember my last day even leaving City Hall, I'm still like in awe, like it's been 12 years, but I cannot believe that I was elected to be here. I cannot believe this. All the way to the last day. And sometime when I walk in City Hall now, it's like, I was here. This is amazing. And you don't know
on the wall.
Yes. And June 16th at 6:00 p.m., my name will be on the wall. The Honorable Dr. Nancy Dunn lobby. So I'm so excited that that will be there to hopefully inspire many others, that people can do whatever they set their hearts or minds to do, or whatever God's given them to do, and just say, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it. And so I didn't wait for other people to tell me. It's God the one who mainly just pushed me. Now I have to say Dr. I call her Dr. Evelyn, but she does have a doctorate in law. Evelyn Tolbert, the first time I ran, of course, I don't know if you know, but I saw my name in the newspaper after she had me sign this paper that I didn't know that's what she was signing, my intent to run. And I was like, Nancy Young is running for council? What? I am? Let me get out there and do a sign or something. Like she pushed me off that side and me dangling my feet in the water. Like, I'm going to do it one day. Like, no, you're going to do it today. That's what you need to do, Nancy. And so that's what unapologetic leadership, and sometimes seeing the leadership in others and pushing them off the side of the edge of the bank where they're just dangling their feet and say, get out there and do it.
That's awesome. Well, and I know you're running as an independent. I know you talked about red versus blue, that you're purple, but you're also running as an independent, which is probably very interesting right now. Not only in the state, but in the country. So why did you do that? And what does that mean for you? I mean, in terms of your role and how you're running?
When I was on the council, and even today I heard some statistics from Paul Mitchell, not the hair guy, because I thought it was hair, when Paul Mitchell, when he first spoke to our group of at League of California Cities. He's spoken to our group several times in our county, and he talked about the statistics. He's a statistician, so he talks about different statistics, but talked about the probabilities of being able to win at local levels. Not an issue really when it comes to being on one side or the other as far as Democrat or Republican, the two main parties, because those are not partisan positions, although some really push, whether they're one or the other. And then you get to state level, where usually you have to choose one side or the other, and definitely at the federal level, same thing. Ross Perot was probably the last one that made it all the way up to president's as an independent. And so I thought long and hard, even when I was mayor, do I want to come out of being independent into one group or another to be able to run any higher level if I decide to do that? And so I did contemplate over the years what I would do, because when I was 17, I registered as a Republican. And I have to preference it because I was at UC Berkeley, and Berkeley was a berserker place. And I was like, this is Democrat right here? Then I must be something completely different. But over the years, I've supported candidates on both sides. I have to say probably 90% more has been Democrat than Republican. But there's some good Republicans out there. And so I have always been completely independent, even from my seat of Republican. Even I was telling someone today that I can walk into any Democratic room and people automatically assume I'm a Democrat. And so, but when I walk into a Republican room, all eyes are at me like, what you doing here? I'm like, oh, I'm Republican. Oh, okay, you come on in. And so, but I could preface myself, and it was hard because when I won as a Republican, even though I was supported by the Republican group, you could feel the thickness of racism and a lot of things that I had to cut through. And even speaking at an event, I said, I know many of you in here didn't even vote for me, but that's okay because I still won, and I'm still here to work with you all. And, some of the people actually came up to me afterwards and apologized to me for not supporting me, and was happy that I was willing to work with everybody. But I'm going to work with everybody no matter what they are anyways, because great ideas come from all kind of people, and you have to be able to bring everybody to the table. And that's what voting purple is all about, being a bridge to all the different groups. So it's not just red and blue. Red and blue, if you color them both together, they will turn into purple. Purple, though, is royalty, and I chose royalty over anything. And so I choose, though, to work with everyone, because our issues of affordability, our issues of safety, our issues of transportation, infrastructure, health, education, none of that is color coded. All of us feel the weight of it all. And we all want a new imagined dream for California. That's one of the things I've been thinking about. It's been a nightmare for so many of us, the American dream. How many people have actually realized that we really, truly need to reimagine a new Californian dream, something that we can all reach. Affordability, cost of living. I mean, cost of living was so different when I became an adult. I made $7.50 working for the state health department when I was at UC Berkeley. But my first apartment was $395 a month with a furnished apartment. Furnished. And then I moved out and got my own 1-bedroom, and it was still only $450. And so with $750, by then I made $10 an hour. But with that, I could still have a savings and pay all of my bills. But PG&E back then was $15 a month. So when it was $30, like in the summer with the air, I'm like, what in the world is going on? 30, woo, that was to break me for 30. But but now, oh my God, it's like easily 600 a month.
Yeah.
For PG&E. So the cost of living overall is just horrendous. So I chose to purposely come out as an independent. I know it's a hard place to be, but I think that a lot of our California has been voting purple anyways. We've been going across the lines for years, but I know many, many people are just tired of the infighting. There's so much disunity, and it's frustrating. When it came to COVID, I don't even want to go back there. There were so many families against families, church people against church people, communities against community on what they thought should be, what they thought shouldn't be, what was happening here, what was happening there. And so we see this fundamental shift in how people treat each other. And on the national level, when the head person in charge and talk raggedy any kind of way, and it gives permission for other people to feel like they can say whatever, they can talk. Our people say out the side of their neck, they can say whatever they want to say. They can say what they've been thinking. They can just highlight all the negativity and the racism of the past. Why? Because nobody gonna say nothing. Right? Because they have the right to say that. But they don't. The disrespect has got to stop. And so I chose on purpose to come out here and say, you know what? I could go back to one party and people would be like, oh, you're the unicorn. You're so special. But then there's so many of them that, talk, I'm a Christian, but they're not living what they say. I'm not about saying one thing and living another kind of way. And then, I have my other friends. I have a whole bunch of friends that are there. And I feel like, okay, yeah, I mean, I could be in your club and you can't support me unless I'm actually in your club. That I still have a personal challenge with. God got to get me through this. So I said, you know what? I'm going to stay where I've been for the last 8 years. I'm going to stay independent. I'm going to have my friends on each side. And when I become governor, I'm going to bring them all to the table. We're going to come up with the solutions together, because I don't think any one group, any one section has it all. I know all of us choose what side we're on because we feel like we have the majority of what it is. But I just feel like I can pull from both sides, and I'm not afraid to go into both rooms. When I went to dim room today, I was a little bit on edge because it was all Caucasians in there. When I went into that room today, except the president, she was Hispanic, Latina. And I'm like, you know what? I was invited to come here, and I'm going to walk up in here anyways. And so I sat there when they had announcements. I raised my hand and I said who I was, and I told them I was running independent. And I said, and I had contemplated whether I come in here. I said, but I ain't scared of y'all. They all started laughing. And then months afterwards was like, I'm so glad you came. I'm so glad you spoke. Anyways, and so yeah, it's just really to get into a lot of different rooms, because I think that's the only way we're going to make things start working. And I think a lot of our Gen Zs and our millennials, they're not with all the right and left, and they want something different. And so right now I'm offering a unified way to get to something different. What that ends up looking like, some have said you should start the purple party. I'm like, I'm not doing all that. Yeah. I just want us to be able to come together, and because I know that those are even in their positions now, to get real work done, you have to get buy-in on both sides.
Yeah.
And so, and that's where I feel.
Let's pause for a moment. We'll be right back.
It's a great point. I mean, certainly we need bridges to, kind of, it's challenging to even understand how we can eliminate the polarization that we've seen. And I know you talked about, kind of unity, and I know you've always been focused on kind of small business and affordable living and all of those things. if you had one thing you could solve maybe in the first year as governor, what would that be?
I think a lot of things boil down as far as solutions to a whole bunch of our L's, and that's prevention. And so that's when it comes to safety, that comes to affordability. So some of the things not about just exactly the what, but the how. So I start with the how. The how is making sure that we have bipartisan buy-in to everything that comes before the governor. So that way we know that people are talking to each other to come up with some creative solutions. And so that's the how part. As far as what I would like to tackle, cost of living and affordability, because that is what's making our people leave our states and our businesses leave our state. We have got to plug up the stoppage of why people are leaving. And a lot of it has to do with affordability. It's not just the over-regulations that we have, because that is California for you. California has so many more regulations than any other place have, but that adds into some of the costs. One of the things with affordability, while we're bringing down costs, because there's some things that we can bring down costs, and I know there's a new deal that our Assemblywoman just was talking about the other day that has to do with gasoline. So I'm going to look all into that because I have great ideas and I want to see what she's already doing in that area. But I know that in Virginia and some other states or some other countries actually have subsidies that actually bridge the cost with what people can afford, and mainly targeting that working class, that missing middle. So my daughter, who graduated from Howard, living in Virginia, she fell within that workforce housing. So her really nice apartment that she had with 2 other roommates, and they shared an apartment. And then when they graduated and started going their different ways, she was able to still stay in that apartment complex. She moved to a different floor, but the apartment looked the exact same, but only had to pay 50% because of how much she made in that workforce. So that workforce housing. So we need to have that. And it's not just for renters. They have that whole program for purchase as well. That's why you don't see homeless all over Virginia, because they have a way to keep people in their own homes. And so the prevention is also immediately looking at changing some of the levels that we have for service. I don't know if you know of many people, but I know of a lot of people that barely missed that cutoff for any kind of services.
Oh, yeah.
So even if the retired, pension is just a little bit above being able to get any kind of Medi-Cal, get any kind of food. So now they're literally making decisions. Do I buy food? Do I buy medicine? Do I cut my medicine in half to try to have it go further? And so we need to look at those things. So some of our most vulnerable people and families are able to have the resources that they need. So we can do that immediately while we're bringing in these subsidies to help bridge those gaps as we're working on lowering these costs, because a lot of the costs come with lack of competition. And when it comes to building and builders, I know talking to developers, their cost is so high because our systems are not streamlined and they're overlapped. And then we get people to come in and review things, then they send in somebody else and they have more requirements. It's just ridiculous. We need to streamline these systems. And the regulations, the regulatory process, so we don't have all this red tape, so that we can get to the finish line much faster. And that's less cost to do that as well. So then the starting cost is going to be lower. So there's a lot of things we could do on both ends, the top and the bottom, but I think we need to start touching where it hurts us right now so that we can lower some of these costs. And so that's the one thing I would want to tackle first. And then the other thing is just really investment, preventative, into behavioral mental health, into mentorship, because that's going to make a huge difference when it comes to safety, when it comes to our children, to our youth, to making the Gen X's and the Gen Z, some X, Gen Zs and the millennials to realize and know, not just saying that we care about you, not that we just hear you, but really that we're responding to make it affordable where you can be independent. You don't have to live at home with your parents. See, sometimes us as parents that our kids have left and come back, oh, we're happy to have them there for a season, because it's a special moment, but we know they're not going to be with us for always, and all of our kids in their home, but it's sometimes that revolving door. It was that way with my siblings. I'm the only one who didn't go back home for a while. I used to always call my dad and mom and say, hey, this is the only kid that's not home. I'm going to visit and I'll be gone. So yeah, but it's one thing to want to do that, because some generational families, some families just enjoy those multi-generations and in their one home, but others, when you have to, and you don't feel like you can ever be independent to do what you want to, come home when you want to, that's not good. And we need to make sure that we're giving our youth a future of independence, a future where they can make way more money than us and still have their own place to live. So yeah, there's a lot to tackle, but those are two of the areas that are really important to me.
Okay. Well, then when you think about, I mean, California is well known for our technology innovation. Do you think that there is an opportunity for Californians to think differently when it comes to innovation, technology, and even kind of economic inclusion?
Every generation, there's always some type of technology advance, and some people get left behind. City of Tracy got left behind years ago. We became a town because we were a railroad town. A lot of cities were established with the railroad. When we had, I don't remember if it was running east and west, and then when we got the north and south, but when we got them to crisscross right there at 6th and right there around Central, a little to the east of that, that's when we became a city itself. And so we were built on trains. We were built on railroad. But then when we changed from coal to steam, City of Tracy didn't do that. They didn't advance with technology. So what happened? We fell behind. And so we lost revenue, we lost people, we lost the industry. But then, fortunately for Tracy, there were tomatoes. So then came the Heinz. And then we had beets, and so came Holly Sugar. So we started using our land, our fields to be able to bring in money to our community. And so, but I think about that, what if they had shifted with the technology that was happening, then not saying that they couldn't have diversified the income or the town, but they just let it die. It just died because they refused to shift and to move. And a lot of people are refusing to shift and move instead of being responsible. Now, with everything comes responsibility, because with coal, we saw, black lung, all kind of stuff was happening.
Yeah.
So, with every technology, there's a lot of push and like, yay, it's making life easier, it's making life better. But then there's a responsibility that goes with each thing. And I think the sooner that we learn and we acknowledge the downfalls, and then we start to look into how can we mitigate that, then it helps us to advance better, faster, farther, and more responsibly. And so that's what's happening even with AI, with a lot of different technologies, a lot of different big businesses that are here in that space. Recently for Earth Day, I judged some of the competitions at Tracy High. And the first group we judged was a AI project. But as I talked to the group, a lot of things that have to do with natural resources come education. You have to educate others on how not to waste, because you have water. People think that water's in abundance. We see the oceans out there, but we're not desalinating the water. Not saying that I don't believe that there's not some real technology out there for desalination. That's another story. So, but, to be able to have that responsibility for how do we deal with AI? How do we deal with it using up a lot of our resources when it comes to water, when it comes to electricity or any of that, and then another group, they had a whole thing of how can we do electricity, find energy that's not just through solar, but they had a whole system that went underground. It was fascinating how these young people are really thinking of ideas. That's why I said so many people voices matter. If we take time to bring all these different people to the table, that's why we have 2 seats on the Environmental Sustainability Commission that's at the City of Tracy. I fought for youth voices because they have great ideas to come and bring forward for us to look at that. So there should be equity and inclusion in a lot of stuff. And I know DEI has become a bad word with our new person in charge in our country. But we still have to find ways that we bring in those balances, because DEI was a good word when I got on the council. And I didn't use DEI when I adjusted our commissions. But what I saw was, like, beginning with the Youth Advisory Commission, we were top heavy Tracy High. And I'm like, we have more than just one school here. We have got to make sure that we have a balance of voices. And so we made it where there was only a certain number from each school that could be on there. And every single other commission has to add is reevaluate everyone. And every time when we're bringing in new people, we're supposed to be looking at the mix, the makeup. Because even transportation, I don't care if they're all the same color. They all look the same. But if they all care about only one thing, like before, our transportation was airport heavy. Okay, wonderful. What about our bus systems? What about our walkability? What about all the other transportation things that we have? in Tracy, if we're only focusing on the airport, we're going to be lopsided. So we have to make sure that we're bringing in all those thoughts and that we're having equitable input to those. And so we need to be training up our people into that. I found out recently, and it's probably not supposed to be online, but anyways, we're going to have some AI stuff coming to Tracy. And so I'm really excited about that at a university level. And so I'm hoping that we can get in at the ground level early and inspire our youth through STEM. I'm on the STEM Collaborative, have been for the last 5-6 years with the school board. And so, and other, for a lot of entities that's involved in that. We need to make sure we get some other voices. I need to hook you up. I brought some other people on that collaboration as well, so that we can get to our young people ahead of time, so that we can start that pipeline, getting into STEM and getting into AI and all these other things. So I'm not sure other things that you had an idea about where it goes with that, but I think that we need to be cognizant of the moving times. We can't be stuck in the past. We can dig our heels in, but that's not going to help us. We need to be able to continue to lead, but I think lead responsibly. I think California can get a little overboard. We need to have a little balance.
And that's great to hear, because I think a lot of times people think about technology, but they don't realize how you can actually create and innovate with the design in mind, with privacy in mind, with responsibility in mind. And instead of just tossing something into AI and telling it to create something, you actually need to think about how it impacts people that aren't represented, right?
Right.
And so I think a lot of times, we think about technology, but we don't think about what it impacts and how it impacts people. Especially if you don't have a diverse mix, or if you don't have, inclusion, you're hearing only certain voices. So I think,
Yeah, and that's the thing too with that reminded me of the SATs versus the ACT. There's different voices. There's different voices and input. Although I was sitting on a plane going to London with a Black lady who was on the SAT team. I was like, wow, we have some input here. And to the way things are phrased.
Yeah.
And so, and how we can have that. But yes, we do need to have those different inputs. I've met the person at Cornell who's developed the AI program for Cornell. It's a Black gentleman as well, as a matter of fact. And I've met people who are working on, all the way down to more recently, how can we build in more security measures to AI? And so one thing that was said today, and it's not about AI, but it's about responsibility and when you're online. And it was said in church, but it was said about these all y'all people don't be putting all your stuff on Facebook. You get mad at somebody, you need to pray. You don't need to put all your business online. The algorithms and everything, it's amazing. Sometimes I'm just thinking about, I need to look up something, and then it comes up. That's disturbing, because I'm like, I know I didn't say this out loud.
Right.
You're doing too much. You're doing too much. Know me. I mean, even my Alexa, I love her downstairs to play my gospel music in my kitchen. But sometimes I'm just like, I have to push that button to mute. I don't want you listening. Don't be ear hustling to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of end user responsibility. And how do you train that? And all these little kids that know so much technology already. And so there has to be some other guardrails. Yeah, that's what's around.
And I think that goes to, that the T word of trust. Like, how do you think we rebuild trust between government and community?
Trust is one of those things that are, it's really lacking. And so I think that's one of the things that I have that say I want to help restore trust, because trust is really, you can trust people when they do what they say they're going to do. When you can depend on, an outcome, an intended outcome. At least if somebody says, I'm going to try, you see them trying. It may not come to pass exactly, but then let's be honest about it. These are our real barriers, or this is the input that I need from you. Some things happen at local levels that, because the people who were up there fighting for stuff, you didn't have anybody in the audience or anybody calling in to say, do that. Or this is what's important to us. I can come and say, yeah, I talked to this group and that group and this is what they said. And other people be like, whatever. But if you come in person and say it, then they're like, yeah, let's do that. So it's going to take, we all have responsibility. It's not just the leaders, but it's everybody being a part of the solution. And so when leaders are going off track, sometimes they're going off track based on what staff or somebody else told them, because that's all the input they have, and they don't have time or they don't have a desire to try to look into any other options. And so, but we need to show up. We need to show up, whether it's in calls or writing or showing up in person, to make sure that we're giving some guidance, because we may do well at legislation. We may not. But that may be all that we know, or we may be very limited. But there's others that are professionals and have real hands-on experience in real world like outcomes. Everything has an outcome. And if we can't think into how that's going to funnel down, then that's a problem. And that's why I personally think that there's prerequisites in school, in elementary school to junior high to high school, as well as in college. I could not take calculus had I not finished trigonometry and all these other things before, and I would have miserably failed because I needed every single thing that I ever learned in math when I took calculus. And so you think you don't like a word problem, please don't just jump into calculus, because all it is a word problem. It's real life problems to try to figure out. But there's a conclusion to it, but there's a prerequisite to get there. I couldn't take Spanish 3 until I took out Spanish 1. I need to go all the way back right now, though, to get my Spanish together. But you have prerequisite to get to new levels, but then you have people that's in high offices. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's wonderful to be a leader. It's wonderful to know business. But if you don't know legislation, or you don't know how things trickle down to the everyday person, then you shouldn't be there if you're not going to listen to people to find out how your decision is going to mess up everybody here. So you're going to pull funding for something that's paid for, grant. And so businesses or communities have paid into things, and now they can't get reimbursed because they thought they were getting that. There's a lot of cause and effect. And so it's trickled down to a lot of things. And so we need leaders that can think like that. And that's how you build trust, really. It's all about trust, like I said, to be able to say what you mean what you said, and have some kind of backup to show that you can at least do something, that you have ideas, or that you actually have the wherewithal to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess one of the questions, I mean, we've talked a lot about this, but it's like, how do you keep humanity at the center of policy while really trying to create systems that allow people not to just survive, but to thrive? And, so, I mean, those, to me, that, one of the challenges I know that I have 4 generations of women living in my house right now. And, my mother is 85. My granddaughter is 5.
Wow.
And, honestly, I thought we might have killed each other by now, but we have learned how to kind of come together. But I think it's, I look at my daughter, and it's challenging to figure out like how to survive, literally survive, much less thrive, in California, and even me as a widow, I kind of go, well, I could sell my house, but where am I going? I got to go live in Tennessee somewhere or something. I mean, like, where can I go, to where I feel like I could have, a beneficial life where I can pay my bills and enjoy myself in my retirement. But, it becomes really challenging when you start talking about affordability. So creating those systems is a challenge.
I think about if some people get in office here at our governor level, it's a concern. It's a concern that I think a number of us will be considering moving away from this state. Because it's like, what is going to happen if both our federal government is hand in hand with some of the insane thoughts for the future of our state, if that were to come to pass? And I think many people should give note to that. Many people have ignored the realities of what's really happening in our country. And so they're ambivalent as to what's happening. Some are quite aware, and they're like, I made a bad choice. And so when we try to tell you to listen, pay attention to who your leaders are. They may be smart in one area, but that doesn't mean that it crosses all areas of who we should choose. That's why I said prerequisites in certain areas, because some don't know, they don't care of how things funnel down to the everyday person. And we need to be concerned about that, because I need to be able to live from day to day because Gen X, my generation, fortunately for you, I know you had a good job for many years, but I know so many people, if I had stayed with the state health department, I could have been retired. I could have been comfortable, but I didn't. I went to Silicon Valley, and then life was very different. They don't they don't have those same allegiances to people. You give them all your blood, sweat, and tears, and then when it's time to right size, they do that. And so I'm unable to retire. And so many of my friends and different ones that I know my age are like, when am I ever going to be able to retire? Can I retire with dignity, whether Gen X or even baby boomers, some that's in between? I've heard once a couple say about a month ago when we were just talking about affordability, they're older than me, probably a good 10 years older than me. They said they're going to have to die like on the edge of a hole that they already have dug so that hopefully somebody just push them over because they can't afford to die. They can't afford to bury themselves. It's too much. And that's not what our state should be. I feel that over the years, the last probably 5, 6 years, as I've been traveling around, going to different meetings and trying to come up with some solutions with affordability and infrastructure and all the things that we need, I'm like, are we really turning it into one big gentrified state? Is this purposeful? That a lot of things are being, pushed down in value or raised so high that different ones have to walk away. So then different entities come in and buy up all these areas and then build them up, but then they're not meant for those who were here before to be able to occupy them. When we move people out of this affordable housing area here in Tracy so that we can build it up and then give them the first right to come back. But then when you wait 5, 6 years to build it up, you think they're about to come back now? It was supposed to have been done a long time ago, but then we didn't get the funding for it. So then it was delayed. Seems to me, I'm looking at other plans. I'm looking at ulterior motives. Like, what are we really trying to do with our state? I think people need to call them to the carpet and make it stop, because else we're going to be one gentrified state. And it's apparent to me, it just doesn't seem that they want us here. Original Californians. I'm sorry. It feels like it's purposeful.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I saw things that were being purposely moved like a chess game, I was always told that, you're just imagining things, Councilwoman. You're imagining things, Mayor. But I see it come to pass. It's not imagination. Yeah. So I think it's time to step up, or else California will be someplace very different that we do not recognize at all. And I don't think that's what historical people who have lived here want to see. It'd be so sad for me to move away far from the place where the lobby is named after me, as if Nancy
Wood Hall. Yes. No, for sure. Well, and I mean, so to that point, what do you want everyday Californians, maybe those who feel unseen by politics, to know about you?
I want them to know that I do see you for real. And that, I only say what I mean what I say. And I know that a lot can happen to make things right, but we have to do it together. We can't stay polarized in our own corners. The thing about, both key parties is that many of the people that work very well are moderate. None are all the way to the exact extreme. But I think other people see that as an extreme, and you swing the pendulum from one extreme to the other when it's so much moderation. So many of us have so much more in common that we need to focus on. So for me, I'm one of really pointing out that moderation. I really want to really pull on, what good ideas do you have? Even if you're not in a party, what good ideas do you have? Let's bring all the people to the table and start really inviting people in. That's the thing. When people don't invite others in, other ideals, that's where you have the issues are. When people think, I got it all, I know it all, I'll tell you what you need. We're never going to get anywhere like that. And so the difference is that I am that sense of consensus builder. There was a time where you don't just keep talking over and over and over because you won't get anything done. And it just goes on and on and on. You have to make a decision, but you have to bring in the best people, the best minds. When we're trying to figure out stuff, I'm like, who else is involved in this? Call them right now. Because now we're not going to do the he said, she said, texting back and forth, emailing back and forth. Let's just get everybody together. Let's just talk at one time. We're going to come to some solutions right now. And that can be done. But we need to make it happen. It was amazing when I was councilman, when I gave suggestions for stuff. When I became mayor, there was, wait, the mayor asked. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, let me tell you. Here's what I need us to do. We need to call this meeting. We need to have this person. And so I didn't realize that. And I'm like, let me utilize that a little bit more. And so I know as governor, I would be able to do that. And that still sounds so British to me, governor. be able to do that. But I want to see that happen. I just know. And so I've just been so many places now. I've been up and down California, all over the place, talking to people here and there. I can't reach millions. I'm just reaching as many as I can and praying that it reaches a whole bunch of people across to know that there is somebody. There's somebody that's different. There's somebody, I mean, people like, I don't really like all the choices we have. Well, then there is me. There is a real action.
If I remember correctly, there's like, is it 67 candidates for governor?
62, but I want to say that 10 or more have dropped off, but their names are still on the ballot. I'm like Karen Tracy, minus the second name, Betty used before mine, and she dropped out a couple of months ago. So at least a month ago. So I'm technically the first person on our ballot here in Tracy.
So where can people follow your journey and get involved?
We are online. There's probably more being updated online, although there's tons of stuff that has not been updated that we have material for on Nancy Young, the number 4 Gov. That's my handle at Facebook and Instagram. I'm also probably Dr. Nancy Young on LinkedIn. And so we're on TikTok, a few places, but then our website is Nancy Young for FOR governor.com. So they can see a lot of information about us on that. Then we have our email. People email me questions all the time. I talk to people all the time. Anybody have any questions? But people can do a general Google search on me and find out a lot of stuff that I've done in the city of Tracy already and in our county. I think that's important for people to be Googleable, to be able to see, yes, I've done some things already. It's not just an idea I have in my mind to lead, that I've actually, caused great things to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've been going for a while, so I probably should let you go because, we probably could talk for another few hours. I'll just ask you this question in terms of like, what responsibility do you think leaders have to future generations? And is there anything else you would like to say on your behalf?
The future generations, it's very, very important that every decision that we make is not just for the here and now. And even any decision that we make with our families, choices that we make, neighborhoods we choose to live in, the schools that they get to go to, it's not just about us, not just about wherever job we're working, but what schools they can, what's the community that's around them, what accesses are they going to have. I chose not to live in Compton, raise my kids, or East Oakland where I lived when I was in college, because I'm like, my kids are not going to be fighting for their life and for their education and for their jobs. I mean, there's only so many fights you can do. And I don't need to put them in unnecessary situations that they have to fight. And so when I told one of my sons when he was at Morehouse and talking about, I wish I was like straight out of Compton like you. I'm like, no, you don't. You straight out the suburbs, boy, on purpose, because I didn't want you fighting for your life. And girls had it different. Girls, I have to say, had it different than guys, even in those neighborhoods. So, I want to make sure. And I didn't know that I was going to have 3 sons and a daughter. So I'm grateful that, they didn't have those fights. But everything that we do, whether or not we're planting a tree, and not to get all Californianly on you, but, whether or not we're being responsible with our water sources, all that goes beyond us. If I'm going to build something and I know it's going to pollute something, who I think that's going to affect? Maybe it might skip me. Maybe it takes some time to get in the ground, in our sources. But it's going to come back on my kids. It's going to come back on my grandkids. It's going to come back on future, where you're going to have to dig out things. And now you have an EIR that you can't get anything approved to build on top of, because now it's contamination underground. That's what's preventing us from even building up some great places in Tracy and other places around our state, because there's contamination underground, because nobody was thinking about that when they put plants or put a loud area. I mean, like industry plants, not a plant. But, in different areas, everything that we do, even with AI, it comes with responsibility. What are we doing for future generations? Even when we're opening up new opportunities, new industries, like we said, even AI is a good example too. What are we doing to prepare ourselves? What are we doing to prepare the future generations for success in those areas, and also for future responsibility? So they're being responsible. It's all about education. I am so big on education and making sure that everyone is aware of their responsibilities, what they do, what they don't do, how things affect one another. Simple thing is like garbage. When we were looking at recycling and even passing down costs, because the city can't be responsible, but helping the public to understand what your responsibility is. Because if we're going to take on the citations that the state has put in place, I'm like, we can't enforce any of that stuff when people don't know that if they put a plastic garbage bag in their garbage thing that they can get cited for it. I'm like, come on, come up with some real solutions. Make it make sense. Give me some garbage bags that's biodegradable or something, because I'm not just going to throw food into the regular one. So y'all not going to come arrest me right on the state level, because I'm like, I'm not going to just throw it in there. I know that we can take it out every week. Going to have stuff stinking up around. Okay, yes, you have new industries that now clean out your garbage cans, but I'm not paying for that. And I'm not going to be doing a water hose. That it's already enough to try to get somebody around here to remember to take the garbage out on the right day and pull it back in that evening. So we're not doing all the extra. So, but the thing is, education will let people know the things that we have, the stickers that tell you what's recyclable and all that. That's because I pushed for that in my city. I said, no, we have got to put at least some educational things on there so people know what goes in a recycle. Is recycle really a pizza box because food have touched it? Technically, it's not. Technically, that's still garbage. And so they will take that out of the recycle thing and put it in the garbage at the dump, because that doesn't go in there. But I learned that in one of my meetings when we were dealing with recycling. So it's a lot of simple things that can just be alleviated if we take time to educate people. And don't get me started with the correctional systems. If we can educate the people coming out of prison and give opportunities, then maybe that'll help, with homelessness, extra input to homelessness, because these poor people can't get jobs and they're not educated on the resources that they have. And it should be mandatory information and education to help them on the street. Okay, there's a lot of issues that are prevailing in California, and I mean to tackle everyone. And just like backing out of that corner, I was giving an example with my case with that packing up the boxes. I think that's what I was talking about when my thing was about going off. Just doing one section at a time, and then before you know it, it's cleaned up. But if you just say, "Oh, it's too much, I can't do nothing," then nothing will get done. But you employ people to help you. You don't have to do it all.
Yeah, no, I hear that. That's awesome. Well, we wish you continued luck and blessings in your journey, no matter where it takes you, because I know no matter where you end up, you are always out there working for the people and providing service. So in the spirit, thank you for your service. I know you have done a lot in the public. And, let us know what else we can do as well to assist as you go. So blessings.
Yeah, we just spreading the word out there across the ways. If we can't get across social media, because you got all kind of fraud happening, affecting my accounts from other countries going and using our accounts to pay for ads in Vietnam and in India. And then we can't even get our own ads out. So we've been struggling with that. So that's why we haven't been able to boost anything, do ads or anything. And it costs a lot for a 1.5 cent sales tax, whether a 1.5 cent for all the registered voters is $132,000. So we can't even do that across the state. So, it's really just word of mouth, and we're walking and talking to as many people as we can. So if other people can just push the message to vote Nancy D. Young for governor, independent candidate on my little 3 description, a CEO, businesswoman, pastor, because my husband and I have been pastoring for over 30 years. Yes. That's one of the main things. And for the last few days, what we can get out there on is donations. So if anybody want to go on our website to nancyyoungforgovernor.com, give a donation. That will help us do something to get some words out there and get more postcards. We've gotten about 30,000 postcards, but we're about done with those. I think we're going to order at least another 10,000 in the next coming few days. So
awesome. All right. Well, you heard it. Dr. Nancy D. Young for governor. So I look forward to hearing more from you. And thanks again for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melyssa. I love being here.
Thank you. That was awesome.
And that, my friends, is Dr. Nancy D. Young, unapologetic, audacious, and rooted in purpose. What I love most about this conversation is that it reminds us that leaders are not born in boardrooms or built overnight. They're shaped by neighborhoods like Compton, by mentors like Evelyn Tolbert, by years of quiet service in churches and classrooms, and city council chambers, long before anyone puts a title in front of your name. Dr. Young has been showing up for this community for years. I've seen it firsthand, from the nonprofit work we've done side by side to her presence at our Kwanzaa celebrations year after year. She has always understood that leadership is about people first. Whether you agree with every position or not, I hope today's conversation reminded you of something important. You owe it to yourself and your community to be informed. Don't just vote a party line. Don't just vote a name you've heard. Take 5 minutes, like we did today, and get to know the person behind the platform. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Nancy D. Young's campaign for governor, visit nancyyoungforgovernor.com and follow her on social media. Every conversation, every share, every vote matters. Here at the Jali Podcast, our mission has always been to expand the dialogue, educate, elevate, and bridge the gap between us through the power of storytelling. Because when we know better, we do better. And when our community is informed, our community is unstoppable. If this episode moved you, share it, pass it on. That's how stories travel, and that's how change begins. I'm Melyssa Barrett. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep living the Jali life. Thanks for joining me on the Jali Podcast. Please subscribe so you won't miss an episode. See you next week.